I thank the organizers of QMAT 2020 for inviting me to this conference. I feel honored to be part of this excellent meeting. So the past few days have been very enlightening, and I'm looking forward to the talks in the coming days as well. So in this talk, I will be explaining a new technique called non-chiral bosonization, NCBT for short, which we have developed in our group that is ideally suited to study a strongly inhomogeneous Luttinger liquids. So the group members who have been involved in this work is now Dr. Joy Prakash. He got a PhD under me in 2019. So the new student who has been working on this and some other unrelated topics is Nikhil Danny. So okay, so my talk is going to involve these sections. I'll start with a introduction. Then I'll discuss the methodology. Then I'm going to show an application to something we have called quantum steeplechase. I'll tell you what that is. Then we are going to study transport phenomena in Luttinger liquid with impurities. And then we are going to study the ladder system. Then, I mean, all these are very standard things that people study using conventional methods. So we are just studying it using NCBT and see how they compare. So then we study heavy motion of heavy impurities in Luttinger liquids. Then we see how they compare, and we try to validate our new technique because it's very unfamiliar and people are very suspicious, understandably. And it's important that we are able to convince the community. So then we conclude. Okay. So let us begin with the introduction. So many-body physics is interesting only if there are interactions, either mutual interactions between the constituents or interactions with external forces. So many fermion systems, so if the constituent particles are fermions, they're usually studied using perturbation theory, where the assumption is that the interacting system is qualitatively similar to the non-interacting system. So this is a paradigm that goes by the name of Fermi liquid theory. So in one dimension, this paradigm breaks down since perturbation theory shows infrared divergences. Instead, a new paradigm known as Luttinger liquid takes its place. So frequently, we are interested in computing something called the Green's function of the system, which tells us a lot about the nature of the quasi-particles. So one particle Green's function is when you create a particle at a given point in space and annihilate at another point in space and ask what the overlap is. So this is usually a hard quantity to calculate. So when perturbation methods break down as they do in one dimension, it's even harder. So however, for Luttinger liquids, a new method comes to the rescue, which goes by the name of bosonization. So the idea behind bosonization is quite generic and appealing. So if you, okay, and it may be expressed as follows. So recall that the density and currents are bilinear in the Fermi fields, and these densities and currents obey a closed algebra amongst themselves, which goes by the name of current algebra. Sometimes the mutual correlation functions involving currents and densities are easier to calculate, but the single particle Green's function is hard to calculate. So in such cases, it's worthwhile asking if we can invert this correspondence, which relates density and current to bilinears in the Fermi field, and write it in terms of so I'm going to my laser pointer here. So so if you have this currents and densities as bilinear, so bosonization is effectively inverting this and writing the Fermi field in terms of rho and j. So the question is, if this is possible, it would be nice. Then we can go ahead and calculate the endpoint functions in terms of the slightly easier to calculate correlations between rho and j. Okay, so so this is rigorously possible in one dimension. So and as this is a specialized conference, I'm going to skip many details because most of the audience knows more than me. And so in one dimension, as we all know, for chiral fermions, this inversion can be done mathematically exactly. So this operator theta nu is basically some combination of the slowly varying parts of currents and densities. And note that here I have invoked the continuity equation to express the current in terms of the time derivative of the density. So for fully homogeneous systems where there is forward scattering between fermions only, this correspondence is remarkably effective. The reason is when we try to compute the single particle Green's function using this correspondence, we need not go beyond the leading term in the cumulant expansion. Just the second moment suffices, and all higher order moments are identically zero. So, so as a result, so this correspondence is very successful in studying fully homogeneous system. It's also successful in studying the half line. So, but however, if you naively try to use this method to just study, say, fermions in the presence of an impurity, you will be unsuccessful if you just use the leading order cumulant. So the reason is because the higher order cumulants, the even ones don't vanish, the odd ones vanish identically. So now the question is, people. So the question is, how do you deal with this? The way it is dealt with in the community is that this is because it is known that this is an operator identity. People use it to write down non-local Hamiltonians that are non-local in the boson and try to deal with it that way. So in our group, we have resolved to find a better way of doing this. Because the conventional approach involves treating the impurity as an afterthought. See, it's either like studying, like either people study impurity perturbatively or they look at a weak link. So that is somewhat like studying it as an afterthought. Whereas NCVT, what it does is it solves the problem of free fermions plus impurity exactly using Fermi algebra and uses that to do the rest to the calculation. So, but then how do you actually implement this? To implement this, we propose modifying the Fermi-Bose correspondence itself in such a way that it encodes the presence, or basically it encodes the impurities, the localized impurities that are present in the system. So we modify the Fermi-Bose correspondence in such a way that none of the sacred rules are violated, like it continues to anti-commute. And if you use this in the bilinear relation, you get back the densities and currents and so on. So, so the big advantage of this is that once you modify the Fermi-Bose correspondence this way, you can continue to use the leading order cumulants to compute the single particle Green's function. However, the downside is that you get the most singular part of this single particle Green's function. You won't get all the pieces. Okay, so but then you are successful in reproducing the most singular part of the Green's function in terms of elementary functions of positions and times for a system as complicated as interacting Luttinger liquid in the presence of impurity. Okay, so let me explain to you what I mean by the leading order cumulant. See, suppose you have a average that you want to calculate like this. I mean, I'm just giving you an example. It could be more complicated than this. Suppose you have some density here. That's the slow part of the density, and you want to calculate an average like this. So typically, what happens is for a homogeneous system where the fermions interact by forward scattering, this is simply given by this expression, and this is exact because it will the higher order results vanish in the RPA sense. So the question is, can you continue to do this when you have inhomogeneous systems? So now, of course, you cannot. But what we have successfully proved in our published works is that dropping all but the second moment in the density is both necessary and sufficient to capture the most singular behavior of the correlations functions of an inhomogeneous Luttinger liquid. So if you're if you decide to be content at only getting the most singular behavior, then you don't have to go beyond the second moment. But then provided you modify the Fermi-Bose correspondence that way. So when I say most singular, I'm giving you an example here. For example, if you have a function like this, 1 by x1 minus x2 whole squared, 1 by x3 minus x4 whole squared. So this is more singular than, for example, 1 by x1 minus x2 into x3 minus x4 like that. Okay, so this is what I mean by most singular. So now, so I'll allow you to read this. So basically what many in the community are very wary and even dismissive of those who question the fundamental of the subject, and most are happy just accepting certain statements and of as facts and proceeding from there. But I was unsatisfied with many of the claims made in the subject, which prompted me to contact Professor Haldane. Initially, he was also strongly dismissive, but when he listened to my questions, he realized that many of those objections had not been satisfactorily addressed, and he proceeded to give me detailed and new and never before seen proofs in a series of over 30 emails September of last year. So this is very beneficial since it put the whole idea on a totally rigorous footing. So the new things which we together did was we should. I felt that this was missing, and he also felt this proof was missing, that the Bosonized field properly anti-commutes with a conventional Fermi field, and also the anti-commutation rule with the Bosonized amongst Bosonized fermions. They are proved by actually I pointed out that there's some illegal contraction of regularization parameters which makes it unconvincing. And then I pointed out that there was a even more convincing proof of the chiral anomaly for chiral fermions, and Haldane used it to prove part A using that idea. I mean, this is nothing that great, but I'm just pointing out that there were a lot of, I felt very sort of irritating features about what is there in the literature about this, which didn't allow me to be convinced by the foundations of the subject. But now I'm convinced. But however, let me proceed. So does this mean that you cannot modify Fermi-Bose correspondence in some way because this is a operator identity? Well, maybe not. So the point I'm going to so this is the pictorially we can describe the difference between chiral and non-chiral. So chiral means that basically you have this infinite straight lines which where the energy is not bounded from below. Whereas in our approach we look at parabolic but close to the Fermi point. So these two are of course qualitatively similar, but they need not necessarily be identical. Okay. So now let us look at the pros and cons of these two approaches. So chiral bosonization, the conventional way of doing it, it's a operator identity. So it can study interacting fermions in a homogeneous system with forward scattering exactly. But the drawbacks are that Hamiltonian of any system other than this is non-local in the bosons, and it will require RG and other numerical systems to study. For example, even a trivial system of free fermions plus impurity is quite hard to study using this conventional approach. And impurities are introduced as an afterthought, either perturbatively or as a sequence of Welsmy basically links. See, whereas non-chiral bosonization is mnemonic, and it reduces to the conventional results for fully homogeneous systems, but it's modified to encode the presence of impurities right from the start. So it can study interacting systems in homogeneous system exactly as before. Now, impurities that cause drastic changes to the properties are not included as afterthought, and the problem of free fermions plus impurities is exactly solvable using this non-chiral bosonization method, as it should be, because it is exactly solvable using Fermi algebra. So the correlation functions, therefore, now are thought of as simple Gaussian deformations of the corresponding results when there are forward scattering between fermions. Okay, so no RG methods are needed, and the most singular parts of the correlation function are expressible exactly in terms of elementary functions of position and time. So the drawbacks of the non-chiral bosonization are that this is a mnemonic, which means it's ad hoc modification designed to reproduce the free theory plus impurities. So that means writing down endpoint functions will mean that you have to invent ad hoc expressions for 4-point and so on. We are close to doing that. It's very tricky. And the other drawback is that the results we get are fully complementary, unfortunately, with the chiral bosonization method. For example, the Green's function obtained in chiral bosonization, they are continuous functions of the impurity strength for weak impurities in presence of interactions, but discontinuous functions of the forward scattering strength. See, this is like a convoluted way of talking about the cutting chain and healing chain. So in other words, when you have impurities and a weakly repulsive interaction between fermions amplifies the impurity, and weakly attractive interactions completely eliminates the impurity. So, however, for NCBT, correlation function is the reverse. The most singular parts of the Green's functions are discontinuous functions of impurity strength for weak impurities. So, in other words, so if you look at the Green's functions for on opposite sides of the impurity, the points are on opposite sides of the origin, then that will not smoothly, it converge to. So if you slowly reduce the impurity, it will not give you back the homogeneous result, because it kind of remembers that there was an impurity there. So it's a discontinuous function of the impurity strength. So this makes the comparison with literature somewhat difficult. Okay, so what is quantum? So we have applied this technique to various problems. So this is an example of an application. So steeplechase basically refers to a sport in which athletes, in our case fermions, hence quantum steeplechase, they traverse a linear path which contains obstacles in the form of barriers and wells. So the Hamiltonian for this quantum steeplechase is like basically you have kinetic energy and this the potential barriers here, which have compact support, so the localized barriers and bells, and this is basically the forward scattering between fermions. So now here is Joy did this kind of animation. So where he talks of so there's a black box. So the dorsal side of the playing card has a black box, which could be anything. So if you flip the card, you will see what all potentials we can study using NCBT. It could be single barrier, triple barrier, double barrier, asymmetrical, well, finite thickness barrier, finite well, and so on. So we can do all this. So so mathematically, these are all the potential we have studied. And now if you look at the RPA limit of those using Fermi algebra, it's like piecewise, it has a first order pole piecewise in a piecewise sense, because after all it's inhomogeneous system. And the coefficients here are related to the Bayer reflection and transmission amplitudes. So capital R would be the reflection amplitude, T is the transmission amplitude. And of course, because now here we are studying systems which have impurities but no interactions between fermions, so Wick's theorem is applicable. So you can write down the density slow part of the density correlation in terms of using Wick's theorem. So these two are used as inputs. So basically, we use this as an input in the NCBT formalism. So NCBT tells us that the results for when you include forward scattering are Gaussian deformations of this result. So using this generating function type of method, we have proved that when you have forward scattering and impurity, the slow part of the density correlations is expressible also in terms of piecewise second order poles. So so this is the result. So so the important question now is, how do you recover the single particle? So like I told you that if you want to do that, you have to modify the Fermi-Bose correspondence so that it encodes the presence of the impurity. So this nu, of course, is the right mover, left mover. Nu equals +1 means right mover, nu equals -1 means left mover. So lambda equals 0 means there is no modification needed. Lambda equals 1 means there is modification needed. So notice that this term is kind of introduced in such a way that the fermionic character of this expression is still preserved. It doesn't violate Fermi algebra because it's 2 pi. That it won't change the Fermi statistics. That anti-commutation will still be valid, and then you can show that if you use this in the bilinear correspondence, you get back the currents and densities. So we have shown that somewhere. Okay. So now the question is, how do you pin down lambdas? So of course, you have to select your lambdas, either presence or absence of this modifying term in such a way that you recover the correlations function of free fermions plus impurity. So if when you do that, you'll see this nice, beautiful result that if you have, say 2-point function. So if M and L are your 2 points, so like I means like, psi x1 into psi dagger x2 average, that type of thing. So then you either, so if you decide to select lambda as 1, So you're forced to select lambda dash differently based upon this prescription. So I'll allow you to read my paper because it's very hard for me to explain, but it's quite symmetrically determined in this way. Okay, so when you when you implement this procedure, you'll be successful in showing that the most singular part of the Green's function for Luttinger liquid with impurities is also a piecewise, power law type of feature is present. Okay, so now let's see applications. And so if you look at the Friedel oscillations, so Friedel oscillations, fortunately, the exponents related to Friedel oscillations are universal, unlike the single particle Green's function of exponent depend on the impurity strength in our approach. But for the Friedel oscillation, they cancel out and they only depend upon the forward scattering strength. So this is identical to what Egger and Graber get in their paper. So many things we are successful in reproducing. Later on, I'll show you the very non-trivial result of MATWeave can be explicitly derived using the formulas of non-chiral bosonization, which is very comforting. Okay, so then we have applied it to the density of states, and you can see that close to the impurity, there's a different exponent. Far away, there's a different exponent. And let us see this slide number 14. So notice that this density plot shows. So the color refers to the density of state exponent. I mean, what we are looking at here is the strength of the density state exponent. So notice that here there is no Modar dependence far away from the impurity, it was all horizontal. But here there is a strong Modar dependence because we are close to the impurities. At least that is how it comes in NCVT. So now, so remember that I told you, or maybe I forgot to tell you, but in that pros and cons table, towards the end, I had pointed out that the results of NCVT are identical to conventional results only when either you look at fully homogeneous system or you look at the half line, and nowhere else the comparison is exact. So it's very difficult to compare actually. So because the conventional approach looks at the full story, but non-chiral bosonization extracts only the most singular parts of the correlation functions in the precise sense in which I have already described. So, however, we continue to compare with other approaches. For example, Font Delft, Fabrizio Gogolin, for the special case of half G equal to half, they show that density of states is linear. That's what we also get using our NCVT, but provided you look at the near half line. Okay. So this is the flow chart which tells you how this thing is implemented. So I'll allow you to later on look at that. So, look, I told you already that the most singular part of the slow part of the density correlation in NCVT is has piecewise second order poles. So that means basically, so even in the presence of impurity and forward scattering, the conductance derived using Kubo formulas to be similar to what is seen in other cases where this piecewise second order pole feature is seen. So that is, for example, in homogeneous fermions, where where you have a second order pole, and also for free fermions with forward scattering, also you have second order poles. So indeed, a calculation using this closed formula I had written down, shows a conductance which is very similar to what you would see for the homogeneous case. This is a well-known result for the homogeneous case where K is the Luttinger parameter. So this general result reduces to this for the homogeneous case. So if you turn off the interactions between fermions but keep the impurity, you get this Landauer type of thing. And then of course, if you have the half line, so if you allow the reflection to be perfect, then the conductance becomes zero. So this has all the features, limiting features. So, however, if you treat conductance differently as the outcome of a tunneling experiment where you inject carriers from one end and collect it at the other end, Then see, the Kubo formula is current correlation related, so which is 4-point function, whereas this way of thinking of it as a tunneling experiment is related to single particle Green's function. And I already told you that in NCBT, single particle Green's function exponents are non-universal, and this is what we get. So it becomes, so therefore the conductance becomes temperature dependent, and but however it still has the qualitative features shown in that old paper by Ken and Fisher, where you see that when you have interactions between fermions that are repulsive, then the conductance vanishes at low temperatures and diverges for high temperature, at least for infinite bandwidth situations. So that's also consistent with what we get. So, but what is really remarkable, I want to emphasize this again and again, is that this should really convince you that NCBT has to be taken seriously. And that is that suppose you redo this calculation for finite bandwidth. So then, of course, that's a very hard thing to do. So one way of doing that, one of the referees themselves pointed out, and that is you take this result, and you see, you pretend that this mod R squared is basically the effective, reflection coefficient. So if 1 minus mod R squared would be the effective conductance type of thing. So then, so if you think of it that way, then you get this transcendental equation for the conductance. So tau is your conductance or the effective transmission coefficient, and so you get this transcendental equation which you have to then solve. So now, if you remember that in 1903 there is this nice PRL by Matveev et al., where they used the fermionic RG to derive the conductance as a function of temperature for finite bandwidth when there are mutual interactions between fermions. So now, so this conductance comes out as some rational function of 2 power law type of things. Now, if you use, so basically, if you plot this result on top of our plot, this transcendental equation solution, you will see a nearly exact match for both repulsion and attraction between fermions. Okay, so now that seems remarkable and astonishing, but actually, so this immediately should tell you that it should be analytically also provable to be identical. So indeed we can do that, and so we can derive the Matveev formula using our transcendental equation. So notice that, okay, let me complete and I'll tell you. So this is the starting point. We have this transcendental equation, you differentiate with respect to y. And then what you do is you notice that in Matveev, they have assumed that the interactions between fermions are weak. So they do perturbative fermionic RG. So this is approximately equal to this. So then you get this simple differential equation, which you integrate, and lo and behold, you get this result, which is identical to Matveev. So notice that this result would have been impossible if the exponents were universal. So the only reason we are successful in reproducing Matveev is because our exponents are non-universal, that they depend upon mod R squared. So it's because it's non-universal that this thing comes again and again. So this comes from the exponent actually, this tau into 1 minus tau. So it would not have been possible, this success would not have been possible if the exponents are universal. So our NCBT is one of the few results that show that exponents in fact can be non-universal when you have impurities. And I strongly feel that this makes perfect sense. Okay, so we have also studied other things like double delta, where you can study resonant tunneling in a Luttinger liquid, and you will see that for appropriate, separation between the barriers, having a barrier is same as not having a barrier, because you get that resonant tunneling situation, and the Luttinger LE means Luttinger exponent. That also like reflects that fact by dropping to 0. Okay, so
Girish,
yeah,
you're running out of time. Can you wind up in another 3 minutes or so?
Yeah, I will wind up in 1 minute maybe. So we have applied it to this ladder systems also. So we have applied the same result to ladder. Like I told you, ladder also we study the the ladder system without interaction between fermions exactly, which is a big plus point. So then we use the results that there as an input, and the final results as straightforward Gaussian deformations of this result, which is obtained from Fermi algebra. So when mutual interactions are present, so as a result, we are able to reproduce the various exponents for tunneling this way, that way, and so on. So we also studied motion of heavy particles in a Luttinger liquid. So we get the mobility. We also studied pairs of heavy particles and so on. So for example, this result we got it's also predicted by Castronetto and Fischer that if you have a heavy particle that's slowly drifting around in a Luttinger liquid, and if those fermions are repelling, the mobility diverges at low temperatures, whereas the mobility is zero when the fermions are attractive. So that's also what we get using NCVT. I mean, like the trends are qualitatively similar. So how do you validate this technique? I already told you one very powerful reason why you should be convinced, and that's the derivation of that Matveev formula from the non-universal exponents, which only NCVT shows, and everybody seems to be suspicious of that. So without the non-universal exponent, there's no chance of reproducing the Matveev result. So, but however, there are other ways of confirming, and that is through various limiting checks, turn off interaction, turn off impurities, far away from impurity. Then you try to reproduce currents and densities by that correspondence. Even though they have modified it, you should still get back currents and densities and so on. And we do. And also perturbation, term by term comparison. But what is even more convincing is Schwinger-Dyson equation. So you know that Schwinger-Dyson equation is exact. So what we do is we can, fortunately, even though we don't have a 4-point function answers yet that modified, how to modify so that you get 4-point function, but still we can make do with that because it's some special case of the 4-point function. We are able to calculate using NCVT both sides of the Schwinger-Dyson equation. So we simply plug in the results and we throw away less singular parts, and lo and behold, it's an identity provided those exponents are non-universal in precisely the way we have explained. Otherwise, in fact, this Schwinger-Dyson equation will not be an identity. In fact, Schwinger-Dyson tells you that exponent has to be that non-universal, and it has to be exactly that and nothing else. Okay, so conclusions. We explained this new formalism called NCVT, and we have applied it to delta functions, barriers, well, steps, and basically the ladder systems, moving impurities. And we have discussed physical phenomena such as resonant tunneling, Friedel oscillations, and so on. And we have validated using that Matveev comparison, perturbation, Schwinger-Dyson equation. So we want to apply this to more systems, such as it would be nice if we can modify that the Fermi-Bose correspondence can be modified to study potentials with non-compact support, like chronic Penny model in a Luttinger liquid. So then magnetic impurities are completely ignored till now. Like that. So these are the publications. So we have had tough time publishing in journals because people kind of switch off the moment they see something even slightly unfamiliar. So most of our papers with great difficulty reach referees, but somehow we have been still successful in publishing. But I am really interested in knowing your honest views from the audience. I hope you will, read our papers with an open mind. I'm not guaranteeing you that everything we have said makes sense, but I'll be very surprised if everything I've said makes no sense. So thank you for inviting me, and thanks for listening.